All right, well, the Young Turks, your host, Cenk Uygur. Look at this. So we're going old school today. Anna's out for the holidays, so I'm going to go solo in the first hour. I got a ton of amazing stories for you guys. On the lighter side, Republicans have started a wide scale, if you will, assault using fat shaming. So that's their new thing. All health problems are due to overweight people. There are tremendous ironies involved. You'll love that story. The Republicans are going to war against each other over obesity. And they're not being that polite, by the way. We will have fun with that story. So I will get to weigh in as an overweight American. Anyway, later in the program, Republicans are also turning themselves into Smurfs. I'm not really kidding. They're not trying to turn themselves into Smurfs, but they are turning the color blue. It is literal. It is amazing. Don't miss that story. And most importantly, in this first hour, guys, a little bit later in the program, I am going to talk to you about. Now we have it, the exact plan for how they plan to do the coup against America. Steve Bannon and Navarro have revealed it. It's amazing. The rest of the media is burying the lead. It's called Green Bay Sweep. I'm going to tell you all about it. You don't want to miss that story. So lots to get to, obviously. So let's get started. Let's go to the first story. Now, a lot of you have seen that there was a shooting in Denver, 5 dead. Also, the person who did the shooting has been killed by authorities, so it makes 6 total. I usually don't count the assailant. This is a mass shooting for sure, by every definition. Even the most conservative definition says 4 killed in a shooting is a mass shooting. By the way, mass shooting is a slightly more polite word than the one that is more accurate, which is a massacre. So now, you might have seen the story, but now you might not have, because it didn't get a ton of press. Why? I mean, that's a massacre. It's in the middle of one of the biggest cities in America. Well, it's become super commonplace, right? Only 5 killed plus the assailant? Well, that's a smaller massacre in America. Every other country would flip out. It would be a national story and it would probably last a week. But here in America, we're used to nonstop massacres, so it's not that much of a big deal to us, not that out of the norm, right? Now I'm going to give you details about this that shows you, though, a second phenomenon that is incredibly interesting about this shooting. And again, that portion has gotten almost no media coverage. It was yet another right-wing terrorist. Now, not all right-wingers in the country are terrorists, obviously, right? But almost all of the domestic terrorists in America today are right-wingers, extreme right-wingers. So that's a fact. The FBI agrees that that's a fact, and it's because of shootings like this. So now let me break it down for you guys. NBC News reports, police in Denver have launched a large-scale investigation into what authorities have described as, quote, a killing spree on Monday that left 4 people dead, now 5, and 3 others, including a police officer, injured. Yes, even a cop was shot and badly injured in this story, but still, ho-hum, another day, another massacre, hashtag America. All right, so then we go to the Denver police chief. His name is Pazin, and he writes, Paul Pazin, he said his officers were working to, quote, stop this suspect from this killing spree. Wait a minute. That's interesting and different. Apparently they had word of this guy and they were worried that he might do a massacre. Why? Well, let's find out. Let's look at what he's been saying online, let alone what other things that the cops might know that we don't know yet. Now, his name is apparently Lyndon McLeod, and he apparently, of course, unsurprisingly, given the right wing, loved and glorified violence and guns. Shocking, I know. He said, quoting Hunter S. Thompson here in a picture that he had in social media, I swore I'd never go unarmed again. Okay, now, if you just stop right there, that's about every right-winger in the country. They love that, they think there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Again, if you live in a different country, you think like, there's something wrong with a guy who says he'll never go unarmed anywhere, right? Not in America. In America, that's perfectly normal. And every right winger would defend that guy. Wait a minute, man! All your weapons are ready to kill, right? So that's right wing in America. It is. It's just a fact. By the way, you could ask them. And they'll say, oh yeah, I gotta have my weapons everywhere. You take my goddamn guns, right? Okay, now, in another place, this was in an interview that he did in 2019. He apparently wrote 3 books. We're gonna get to those in a second because they're doozies. And he was being asked about that, and he said, we are armed and, quote, could be dangerous. So again, look, I gotta give it to 2 different audiences here. If you're in America, you don't even know why I'm reporting this story. This is so normal. Right-wingers saying, I got my guns, I'm armed, and I could be dangerous. That's almost every right-winger in the country, right? Whereas if you're in a different country, you're like, whoa, that guy, the police should look into that guy. He's saying he might kill people. By the way, editor's note, he did. He murdered 5 people. But in America, that's perfectly normal. That's perfectly normal because we've lost our minds, the entire country, specifically the right wing, but the rest of us tolerated. Oh yeah, they came to murder us all, and we gave them weapons to do it, and it was all perfectly legal. Nothing wrong here, move along, but it gets way worse. Now, here we go. Sun Times reports, he reportedly harbored extremist views and alt-right conspiracy theories online. Now say it with me. Of course he did. That's what almost all of them now, almost all the domestic terrorists right now have these same kind of thoughts. So now the Daily Beast, they explain further. Lyndon McLeod, who police say killed 5 people during a deadly rampage in the Denver area, was an author dedicated to alt-right philosophies, including masculine supremacy, that's very important, contrarian COVID-19 beliefs, of course, and targeted violence against the quote unquote weak. Now guys, if you've been watching Young Turks, consistently, you've seen me say this on multiple occasions, and thank you for watching consistently. They're pushing this idea that being right-wing is macho. I mean, that's an old school thing, they've been doing that forever, but now it's got new wrinkles to it. Like, oh, you take the vaccine, you're not a man. Real men don't need no stinking medicine, okay? Real men take dewormers. Real men work out, do MMA, and they think everybody else is weak, we're strong, we got guns. So right now, this sucks because he didn't used to be like this, but the leading purveyor of that ridiculous masculinity is Joe Rogan. So if you're pumped and you love fighting, okay, you're tough, you got guns, yeah, right? And vaccines, man, no, that's for weak, that's for the weak. Now I told you guys, way before the shooting, you can go back and watch those videos. I told you that they're pumping people up to do stupid stuff and telling them that if they don't believe in insane right-wing ideology, they're not real men. Tucker Carlson, by the way, even bigger advocate of this than Joe Rogan. He does it almost all the time. He talks about how first he was saying the vaccines make you feminine, then he turned around and I guess he wanted not to kill too much. Maybe he realizes his audience is really old, and if they're unvaccinated, a lot of them might die off. So he then turned around and said, COVID's making you feminine, but everything makes you feminine. Everything they don't agree with on the left makes you feminine. You better fight back against it. They told Lyndon McLeod, and he apparently listened. So look, I do want to give caveats. I'll save that for a second, okay? But we continue. Now, McLeod, as I told you, wrote 3 books. And what were they about? Well, Daily Beast explains, they followed a character named Lyndon McLeod. He named him the main character after himself. A persona named after this author who, quote, commits 46 murders in the book. Again, if you're in any other country, you think, well, the authorities got to look into that guy. In America, what do you mean? Violent right-wing fantasies of murdering their opponents? That's called freedom, #freedom, okay? Now, of course, we're getting to the usual stew of COVID conspiracies. McLeod shared a COVID conspiracy meme on Twitter that appears to show Facebook boss Mark Zuckerberg and Microsoft founder Bill Gates discussing an injectable nanoworm. If that doesn't make any sense to you, you're a sentient human being. But for a lot of the right wing in this country, they're like, obviously, Gates, Zuckerberg, pizza, basement, little children, injectable nanoworms. A giant percentage of this country, tens of millions of people have lost their minds. They're completely detached from reality, and they're wandering around looking for injectable nanoworms. There's never been any evidence of any of that. It's total insanity. 99.999% of the doctors say, no, there are no injectable nanoworms. And they're like, no, oh yeah? The 0.001% is right. I found a rando on Facebook and he says there are. I'm gonna go murder people. That's what McLeod decided. Now he gets very specific about the weak and the strong. So guys, here, I'll do the caveat now before I read you this awful quote. So I get it. Not every right winger is going to do this. I said that right from the outset. Obviously, I would hope to God tens of millions of Americans aren't going to go and grab guns and start killing everybody left and right. And second obvious caveat is this guy clearly has some issues. But I got news for you. Every terrorist has issues. It's not like they find the most successful and amazing, well put together, psychologically sound people. And by the way, I know what right wingers always think. Oh, Muslims. No, by the way, newsflash, right wingers. When you think terrorist, statistically in America, it makes no sense to think of Muslims anymore. I get it, 9/11, etc. Back in the day, you had that in your mind for those real reasons, right? Now, it's you guys. It's your team. There's almost no left wingers that do any of this. None of left wing media ever encourages this. In fact, we are united in saying physical violence is insanity, insanity. But right wing says, hey, well, violence, guns are the answer, guns are the answer, guns are the answer. What do guns do? They kill people. So you don't need tens of millions of people to do it. You just in that mass amount of people, you just need to find a couple of unstable folks. This is old school terrorism. So whether it was Muslim fundamentalists or Tamil Tigers or the Irish when they were fighting against the British, they normally don't get the judge, the doctor, the lawyer to do it. Sometimes that happens, but much more frequently, they find someone who is desperate and they brainwash him and they tell him violence is the answer because they don't need everybody to do it. They just need a couple of people to do it. Okay, scare the hell out of everybody else, intimidate them, and get them thinking, if I oppose the right wing, I might wind up being in danger. So one of the stories we showed you earlier, I think was very important. Again, got almost no national press coverage. Guy goes up to his neighbor and shoots him and kills him because he had a Biden lawn sign. Well, that's old school Klan-like terrorism. You vote the wrong way, we murder you. Now everybody be careful how you vote. Be careful who you're with, be careful what you do. So this particular guy apparently owned a tattoo store. Most of the people he killed either worked at other tattoo stores, etc. So could there be a personal element linking his need for violence to these specific people that he killed? Of course there could be. Did he have mental health issues? Almost certainly, right? I mean, who does this? That's rational. But again, almost all terrorists do. And the terrorist leaders go look for them and bring them in. And again, I want to be clear. I'm not saying Joe Rogan is a terrorist leader, but what he's doing is he's creating this idea, and Tucker Carlson far more so, that if you're super masculine, you don't listen to scientists, you don't listen to doctors, your answers are in idiots online that have no qualifications. And by the way, your second answer is always violence. And if you're a real man, you'd have weapons and you'd be looking to kill, okay? So now, Rogan will say, oh, no, I'm not saying they're looking to kill, just defense. I mean, the people with guns having to go on the offense almost every time. But boy, that's just a coincidence that it happens over 90% of the time, but sure, it's for defense. And by the way, I'm being unfair to Rogan here because he's a small part of the equation. The part that drives me crazy and why I'm mentioning him here is because he's created this meathead army, right? And they glorify all of this. Tucker does it on purpose, for sure, and I have no problem blaming him and almost the entirety of right-wing media. So that leads us to this quote from Lyndon McLeod. Sun Times explains. He wrote, now I'm gonna have to clean this up as much as I can, the cursor and the actual thing. He says, our entire story is made up of crappy little Fs who insult badasses and get away with it because law enforcement and social norms protect the weak from the strong. I'm over it. The weak better buckle up. Crap's about to get real. By the way, most of the people he murdered were women, unarmed women, because he's so strong. They got them all pumped up. If you're really strong, you hurt the weak. You carry around weapons and are ready to use them. Denver Police Chief Paul Pazin said, this is the holiday season. To have this type of spree take place is not normal for our community. I got bad news for you, Chief. It is normal. First of all, you live in Colorado. Have you not paid any attention to the news? It is very, very normal to have massacres in Colorado. If you said to me, name 3 things about Colorado, massacres would make the top 3. Non-stop massacres in Colorado and all over the country. Not normal in our community. What are you talking about? This is America. And when we argue against it, the right wing rise in their fury and say, how dare you? You're promoting weakness. We will all be armed. And guys, I'm not exaggerating. There are polls that show 28 to 40% of Republicans now saying it might be time to resort to violence. And look at that, they're resorting to violence all over the country. I'm sure it's all a coincidence. It isn't. It's stochastic terrorism. That means terrorism designed to get to strike terror in your political enemies by not saying, hey, you kill Bob, you kill Susie, because that will get you in legal trouble. It's to say, well, if you were really strong, you'd have a lot of weapons and you would probably at some point use it against government tyranny. Now, 9 out of 10 times they wind up killing women at tattoo parlors, right? But that's how they get pumped up to do the stochastic terrorism. And we all move on because if you insult the right wing in America, not just the right wing media, but corporate media will come, oh, how dare you? They buy products. They buy products of our advertisers. You're not allowed to say obviously true things about the right wing. Sorry, I am allowed, I just said it, and you all know it's true. All right, we're gonna take a break. We're gonna do some other important stories, but lighter stories too, about how they're turning themselves blue. But a story about the division within the right wing, and it is real. And I agree with one side and don't agree with the other side, and you might be very surprised at the side that I agree with. All right, we're fair and honest, we'll be back. All right, back on TYT, Cenk, Uygur, and Hunter with you guys. Hunter Ramey just joined by hitting the join button below on YouTube. We appreciate it, Hunter. Now you're one of the Young Turks and you help us make this show possible. So if you're not on YouTube, tyt.com/join. You make all difference. All right, let's go to the next story. Now we got drums here in the Republican Party. Dan Crenshaw is going to take on the Trump wing. Now, this is not a fight you see every day. Crenshaw pretends to be with the Trump wing, but philosophically, ideologically, he is not. So let us show you the proof. First, Representative Crenshaw.
China just has to prepare for, subjugating their own people. That's one of their big focuses. Right. And then they have to focus on screwing with us. Maybe not defeating us, but maybe that's eventually their goal, but screwing with us. Russia is primarily focused on their periphery, right? They want the Ukraine, et cetera. That's usually what they care about.
Right.
But we have to care about everything. And it should be that way. I think too many on our side get hung up on this issue. And they pretend like we can be an ostrich and hide, and that just makes you an easy target. It's unbelievably naive reasoning, and dangerous reasoning, and stupid. I can't say that enough. Everybody who's ever screamed "No more endless wars" as their foreign policy is a freaking idiot.
Everyone who has screamed "No more endless wars" is an idiot. Interesting. Well, let's go to the next video and find out who that idiot is.
We are ending the era of endless wars. In its place is a renewed, clear-eyed focus on defending America's vital interests. It is not the duty of US troops to solve ancient conflicts in faraway lands that many people have never even heard of.
Oops, that looks like fighting words. So, any real reporter should ask Dan Crenshaw, are you saying Donald Trump is an idiot? Because you seem like you very clearly said that. You said anyone including people in your own camp in the Republican Party who talks about endless wars, are idiots. And Trump clearly said it. And by the way, that's not the only time he said it. So this is a real divide, guys. This is not a fake divide. In the past, they had fake divides. Tea Party would be even more extreme right wing, and the other Republicans would pretend that they were against the Tea Party, and they would happily get pulled to the further and further extreme right because it was all about tax cuts, all about deregulating business. That was the old days when they used fake populism to get corporate handouts. Now, the Republican Party is still 90% that same philosophy, but there is an actual populist swing here. Now, a lot of that populist swing is totally fake as well. Donald Trump, what did he do? Gave tax cuts for the rich. That's the only thing he passed, right? But there are some issues they genuinely disagree on, which I'll give them credit for. In the Democratic Party, disagreement is not allowed. Anytime you disagree with Pelosi or Biden, not just Democrats, but everybody in mainstream media will yell, "How dare you? Bow your head." I mean, that's what they did to Nina Turner in her campaign in Ohio. There was the national press that was outraged that Nina Turner would not bow down to Joe Biden and do everything that he commanded of her. They said that was a giant mark against her. How dare she oppose leadership? What does she have, an independent mind? So here I am giving credit to the right wing. No, there's a real divide here on some issues, and they actually have a disagreement, and it's real, and it's not just driven by donor money. Good on them. And so in this, and I'm gonna tell you which side I'm gonna come out on, right? But it's not just Donald Trump. There are other people in the Republican Party against endless wars. Here's Matt Gaetz.
I think the problem is that these military contractors want to have as many of our brave men and women spread all around the world as possible because somebody's got to sell them toilet paper, somebody's got to provide housing, somebody's there preparing the MREs, and it is all about money, and I resent the hell out of it. If you think that you can replicate America in the deserts of the Middle East, you are seeing a mirage in that desert. You cannot build democracies out of blood and sand and Arab militias. The best way to show peace through strength is not to have weakness with a diluted, over-deployed force in unconstitutional wars. The way to show peace through strength is to be the most inspirational version of ourselves.
Now, I hate to do it, but I agree with Matt Gaetz and Donald Trump, only on this issue. But I'm not on a partisan team. I don't care. I don't work at MSNBC. I don't have to kiss Democratic ass 24/7 like they have to, right? I don't work at Fox News. I don't have to kiss Republican ass or Trump ass or any of that stuff. We're independent thinkers here. And I think there's a clear winner in this ideological battle. We've done endless wars for the last 20 years. How's that worked out for us? Total disaster, wasted trillions of dollars. And if some right wingers have now genuinely come to that position, I'm not gonna look a gift horse in the mouth. That's been our position for 20 straight years at TYT and for progressives. So if they're actually representing their voters, which they are, by the way, where do the voters come out on this? There's no question they're on the populist wing. That's why the populist wing is called the populist wing. So, and on the lives lost, the needless wars. Now, what unites, in our case, progressives that are reasonable and want to look out for the American voters, and the extreme right wing here who I disagree with on every other issue. Matt Gaetz is a otherwise loathsome character, okay? Well, what unites us is that Matt Gaetz doesn't take corporate PAC money. Now, if you take the corporate PAC money, some of that's gonna be Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and Boeing and Northrop Grumman, you name it, all the defense contractors, it's some of the top donors. Almost everyone who takes money from those guys, both in the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, say endless budgets for defense. Manchin said we can't afford 1.75 trillion, and he then turned around and said yes to the defense budget, which in the same time period would be roughly 9 trillion. 9 trillion. He claimed he cared about deficits, doesn't care about any of that. He gave it all to defense contractors who pay him. Joe Manchin's a Democrat and he's corrupt. And by the way, outside of this small populist swing in the Republican Party, the rest of them are corrupt as anyone could possibly be, including Dan Crenshaw, who talks a good populist game, mainly talking about violence and guns and hating the other side, etc. But at the end of the day, he's still the same old neocon that George Bush, Dick Cheney, Condoleezza Rice, all those guys were. And a lot of the never-Trumpers, by the way. And other people in that camp are Tom Cotton, huge neocon, Nikki Haley. We'll get to them in a second. But wait, I'm not done with guys, with people that I can't stand that are right on this issue. Marjorie Taylor Greene, look at this. She says, thank you, Matt Gaetz, for your kind words. Republicans should oppose endless wars, oppose nation building, and oppose needless spending, American lives and treasure all over the world. Trillions of dollars spent in the Middle East in over 20 years for what? Marjorie Taylor Greene, mainly funded by small dollar donors. You might not like those donors. You might think they're nuts, but she's not leaning on corporations. She's leaning on her grassroots. And look at that. She's honest on this issue. Interesting. It's almost as if everyone else is under complete and utter corporate rule and is obviously lying to you. So look, Marjorie Taylor Greene is nuts on other stuff. She's talking about Jewish space lasers and all that insanity, right? But it doesn't mean that corporate rule is awesome and we should have nonstop wars because some right-wingers finally agree with us. No, there's a clear right and wrong here. So now let's break it down. So who's on what side? Well, now you've got the populists versus the neocons. Let me show you who's who. On the one side, you got the populists, that's Trump, Gaetz, and Marjorie Taylor Greene. Remember, especially when it comes to tax cuts for the rich and corporate giveaways and etc., those guys are still bad guys. They still do all of that horrible stuff that Republicans do, yes, in favor of corporate rule, so in that way they're fake populists, but at least on this issue and maybe one or two others, they have an actual genuine populist strain to them. Whereas Crenshaw, Cotton, and Nikki Haley are constantly pushing for war after war after war. Many of them said go back into Afghanistan. They're completely controlled by their corporate donors, including the defense contractors. This is finally in American politics a real difference within one party. And then a couple of quick updates on this. Of course, Liz Cheney, she is on which side? Of course, she's on the neocon side. So Liz Cheney, which by the way, Nancy Pelosi and Democratic leadership now love, because they also agree with her on endless wars, despite the fact that they say otherwise. I'm telling you, Pelosi and others are liars, and certainly Biden's record indicates that. He voted for all of the wars, including Iraq, Hillary Clinton, same thing, John Kerry, etc. Liz Cheney, now the beloved hero of Democratic leadership, is the same exact position as Dick Cheney, the mother of all neocons. Okay, and finally, these new neocons are replacing the old ones, which are Lindsey Graham, John McCain, and Joe Lieberman. Joe Lieberman was also in the Democratic Party, and but of course was a right-wing neocon through and through. And Lindsey Graham's still around, and of course still in the neocon category. But these new young faces are coming to take their place. But as that great line from the TV show Boss once said, "Change on the outside, continuity on the inside." So you got different faces, but it's the same old corrupt game to go have our kids get killed in foreign wars so that they can rob us of trillions of dollars. And we are an honest show. So if they are correct about something, I love to point it out. And in this case, some of the worst political actors in the country are actually definitely correct and fighting against the corruption in their own party. Facts. Okay. So now let's go to the next story, and this is also about fighting within the conservative circles, but both on something way less important. But at the same time, there's an interesting angle here that is not just about a cat fight. So let's do it. So Candace Owens and Meghan McCain are at each other's throats. Now this is not about the fact that they're two women in the right-wing movement. This is a classic, insane side of the right wing, which now is the overwhelming majority. And yes, believe it or not, Meghan McCain in this context is going to represent the sane part of the Republican Party. She's going to state some facts, which are of course going to enrage Candace Owens. But the more important part of this story is the particular attack that Candace Owens uses, because it made me remember, wait a minute, I've heard that many times before. Oh, they've got a new thing that they're trying in the right wing. Everything is the fault of fat people. I'm not kidding. You're gonna see the actual videos and quotes for yourselves. This is fat shaming on a national scale, and it's amazing. And it's also very counterproductive. But now their fake populists are so into elitism, they've lost track with real America. All right, but first, let's tell you the details of the fight. Now, you remember Donald Trump went on Candace Owens' program, and he said that he took the vaccine, he took the booster, and he thinks the vaccines work. Candace Owens later afterwards came out and said she does not agree. She, of course, vaccines are not what you should do. So real doctors and scientists believe that. You don't want to listen to doctors and scientists. You want to listen to idiots like Candace online. And she's now selling products that turn you blue. That's hilarious. We're going to tell you about that later in the program. And so she's running that scam, right? She's a well-known grifter in that regard and many other regards. Okay, so Meghan McCain comes in to defend, of all things, Donald Trump, because this was topsy-turvy. Now, Meghan McCain normally hates Trump, but she's very right-wing in other respects. Candace Owens normally loves Trump, but is against Trump on the vaccines. It gets confusing, but stay with me. So Meghan McCain strikes back at Candace Owens for criticizing Trump and saying he's old and only reads newspapers, and that's why he doesn't know. You should listen to idiots online who don't have a doctoral degree, who aren't doctors, who aren't scientists. You should just listen to grifters like me, Candace says. And Meghan says no. And obviously, I'm paraphrasing Candace Owens there. And we covered it on earlier programs. Trump schooling Candace Owens, Meghan McCain says, with facts and logic regarding getting the vaccine is really a sight to behold. Credit where credit is due, and I hate the guy. And by the way, I said the same thing on the show over the course of the last couple of days. I don't like Donald Trump at all, but he was right about the vaccines, and thank God for that. Credit where credit is due. So, of course, Candace Owens goes, facts and logic. Oh, somebody put out the bat signal. We gotta go fight, right? So she writes, hey, Meghan, did you know that the overwhelming majority of people dying and or being hospitalized from COVID-19 are clinically obese? People like you love the vaccine because it allows you to pretend that you care about health. People like me see right through that BS. What a weird attack on Meghan McCain's weight. I get it with the right wing, there are no bounds. I'm not unfamiliar with attacks about weight from the right wing. I'm very familiar with it. So that part's not surprising. What's surprising is the pattern. Meghan's gonna strike back, but first, Candace actually said it on tape too. Let's watch that.
Okay, Instagram. First and foremost, I'm so sorry I'm late. I was late because I was just about to get on, and then somebody texted me a tweet that Meghan McCain sent about Trump owning me on vaccines. And nothing annoys me more than Meghan McCain, who is clinically obese, has never cared about anything pertaining to her health in her entire life, who is using the vaccine because it allows her entry into a category like health. You know, like she's never been allowed to be in this discussion because she clearly does not care about her health at all. She's never cared about her health, right? And so you get these individuals who just will be like, oh, well, I don't want to eat well. I don't want to work out. I don't want to make good decisions. But now I get to talk to everybody else about how they don't care about their health. Like that's like that psychosis. Like if you think that you should be getting like Meghan McCain cares about health and Joe Rogan doesn't, you're not paying attention, like at all.
Now, we're gonna get to Meghan's clapback. We're gonna get to other conservatives saying similar things. But first, I gotta address it, of course. Hey, dumbass, weight is not contagious. I mean, it's the simplest things. But she knows that her audience, their IQ, collective IQ is so pathetically low that almost no one watching her that's right wing will go, hey, wait a minute. I can catch a contagious disease from someone else. So whether I get the vaccine or I have a mask or I sneeze on their face matters because it's contagious, and that's why I would care. Whereas if Meghan McCain is being unhealthy because she had too big a ham sandwich, That's kind of like her problem and not my problem, because ham sandwiches are not contagious. That's so obvious. Isn't that super, super obvious? But the right wingers, it isn't. They're like, oh, what? Am I calling you dumb? Yeah, of course I am. You call all of us fat and you think, I got you, man. I got you. Oh, he called me dumb. I'm so hurt. I'm so hurt. I don't care that you're hurt. I don't care at all. You don't care about anybody else's feelings. And I feel terrible for Megyn here. So let's talk about me. Goddamn right I'm overweight. And so is that an issue for me? Yeah. Do I care about my health? Of course I do. Here's another note that of course people have trouble understanding. Yes, different people have different genes. And yes, what you eat definitely makes a difference on top of your genes. But maybe Candace got lucky and Megyn didn't, right? And they have different genes. It's possible that Megyn eats less. I know for skinny people, they're like, no way, man. My skinniness is earned. I am the greatest for doing it because I care about my health. Everyone I see overweight, I'm judging you. I'm judging you. And it's not your genes, just shut your mouth. By the way, we've lived with that our whole lives and you know it. It doesn't, this one wasn't political until they made it political, left wing, right wing. If you're overweight, you know it. You've been judged and shamed your whole life. And they say, oh yeah, it's because you're eating too many Sundays. It's your fault. Now this isn't very good politics by Candace or any of the other right wingers, but that's the direction they're going. And if you want to say, hey, we should regulate people's insurance and charge them more if they're smoking or if they're eating too much, they weigh too much, etc. That's a different debate. I hate that debate, but I understand it. But it is not contagious. Idiots, okay? So I have to clarify for the slow audience that Candace has. Now, Megyn strikes back. She says, coming from the woman who did an entire Instagram live tonight talking at length about how obese I am, as opposed to addressing the fact that her hero fact-checked her. You spread misinformation about the safety of vaccines. You're a danger to public health. Get effed. I like the ending. Now, that's why me eating 3 Sundays, which I don't, okay, but if I did, is my business and is a public health problem, is not a public health problem, it's a health problem to me. Whereas if I'm spreading a contagious disease around, that's a public health problem that affects all of us. I am talking slow for right wingers. But hold on, I'm gonna get to how fat you are in a second too. All right, now Candace is not the only one doing this. If she was, it'd just be a silly little fight. And that'd be a fun story, but this one's actually serious. Here we go, here's more. Marjorie Taylor Greene said, the controversial COVID-19 vaccines should not be forced on our military for a virus that is not dangerous for non-obese people and those under 65. With 6,000 vax-related deaths and many concerning side effects reported, the vax should be a choice, not a mandate for everyone. She's wrong about all the facts. Yes, it does affect overweight people more, is a bigger danger, etc. Again, that is specific to them. But there it is again, that's weird. I remember reading that the first time saying, it's kind of a glancing shot at overweight people. But basically she's saying, look, COVID's for fatties. That's the only people who it matters to. I'm not fat, what do I care? And by the way, that is very right-wing ideology. Candace is not overweight, Marjorie Taylor Greene's not overweight. They're like, it doesn't affect me. Oh, it affects my voters? It affects real Americans? I don't care. You're not me. I don't give a damn about you. That is right-wing ideology 101. Not alone, Katie Pavlich. Many are losing their minds over Joe Rogan, a healthy, non-overweight, athletic person making personal decisions and taking a Nobel Prize winning drug. Hilarious. It was Nobel Prize winning for deworming, you morons. Not for coronavirus, has nothing to do with coronavirus, you obvious liar, Katie Pavlich. CDC, 80% of people hospitalized or dead from COVID were obese. Rogan isn't the problem. The reaction to his choices is telling. That is almost word for word the same thing Candace Owens said, you just saw it. Oh, our side is fit and healthy. Is it, by the way? I'm getting to the numbers in a second. We're fit and healthy. Joe Rogan's right, just because he's in good shape. Meghan McCain, obviously not right. Scientists and doctors with all their facts. Yeah, you have facts about science. Oh, well, I have a fact that you're a fatty. This is the right wing now. Everybody's making some mention of it. Here's Tucker Carlson.
As a medical matter, being overweight is in fact a significant risk factor for dying from the coronavirus. That is a problem. There are a lot of overweight people in America. Since they made us all quit smoking, it's become a pretty fat country.
Wow. Okay, so this is the new right-wing strategy. The only people dying are fat, and they had it coming. Well, let's try to find out how prevalent obesity is in America. A lot of you can see this coming, but apparently these right-wing morons can't. The US obesity prevalence was 42.4% in 2017-2018. Now that number is probably similar today, if not higher. 42% of the country is obese, and you just blamed everything on them. They have a clinical inability to empathize with other human beings. They look at you, and if you're overweight, even if you're a right winger, you could be the most hardcore right winger, and they'll look at you and go, he's fat. I don't like him. She's fat. It was COVID's her fault. Her problem, not my problem. You think they care about you? They can't stand you. You think they're populist? Tucker Carlson's the heir to the Swanson fortune. All these people are incredibly rich, and they don't give a damn about you at all. You could be the most right-wing guy in the world. You could love them, and they don't give a rat's ass about you. Okay, but I got one more fun fact for you. Well, do we know if Republicans or Democrats are more overweight? I mean, did anybody do a study on that? It turns out they did. You ready for this? In regression models, adding median income and percent ethnic minorities as covariates, percent of votes received by the Republican candidate remained a strong and highly significant predictor of percent obesity. Oops. That means Republicans are definitely, statistically, significantly fatter than Democrats. So you just made fun of your entire base. Well played, Tucker and Candace. So, by the way, I included the first part of that sentence, both for accuracy and because I was amused by it. They're like, you don't get it, guys. We did regression analysis where we took out every other factor. Maybe they're richer and that's why they're overweight. Maybe they're poor and that's why they're overweight. Maybe it's the minorities versus non-minorities. They took all that out. And they're like, no, just being a Republican by its own means that you are more likely to be fat. Now, do I care? Am I rubbing it in? Well, for the right-wing leaders, yes. Ha ha. You guys want to make fun of other people for being fat? It turns out all your followers are little fatties, okay? Now, do I actually mean that? Of course not, of course not. I'm overweight. And I just told you why it makes no sense at all. But this is the insane logic. If you got mad as a right winger when you heard me say that, well, I'm actually on your side, and these guys hate you. And they actually do think that. Isn't that amazing? But hey, listen, if you say, well, on the other hand, they hate brown people, so okay, call it a draw. Do whatever you want, but if you're overweight, the Republican Party apparently is coming for you, and they think you caused all the problems. And if you die, it's not that big a deal. Wow. Okay, we're gonna take a break here. When we come back, an amazing story where Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro admit how they were planning to do a coup in American politics. Amazing. We'll come back. All right, back on TYT here. I want to thank some new members that just joined on YouTube. Brad Battaglia and Douglas Moore, you guys are awesome. Brad and Douglas, hit the join button below. And thank you for helping us get the truth out there and bring some positive change in the world. Ernest785 wrote in on Super Chat. Cenk, where to find the exact proof from corporate Democrats get paid not to pass certain bills? Is there any specific website that shows or exposes that? Well, we expose it almost on a daily basis. And so it's, when we say they're getting paid for, we're talking about the campaign contributions. And you can go to Open Secrets, that's the site that has all the public donations. They don't have the dark money donations, which are much larger, but it already gives you a sense of exactly who is paying Democratic politicians in the form of campaign contributions, and it's millions upon millions of dollars for almost all of them, except for the Justice Democrats and a couple of others. And then you see their votes match up perfectly with their donors, perfectly. And the mainstream media, who are the reporters in this country, say that's just a coincidence, that every vote matches every donor's wishes for corporate Democrats and corporate Republicans. Gee, I wonder if they're in on it. Okay, Francisco Cruz says, Cenk, keep speaking truth to power. Many greater force of our universe always be in your favor. Love the Cruz family. Thank you, Francisco. It's a lovely message, I appreciate it. More from Super Chat here. Candidate Dragon said, that's twice today that TYT has shown me something Trump said that I found myself nodding in agreement to. What's going on here? Isn't this supposed to be the leftist propaganda? Okay, and he's kidding, of course, or he or she, I don't know who it is. But that's right. If they're right, we don't have a grudge where, we ahead of time decided that everything Trump is saying is wrong, or Gates or anyone else. No, we actually assess every single time, is it true or is it untrue? And who cares about partisanship? If the Republicans all turned around and were on the right side, I would say they were on the right side. All right, Courtney Morrison says, thank you for covering the Denver shooting. Friends lost loved ones and we're hurting. Your coverage was so thoughtful, better than anything local. Courtney, thank you so much. We try so hard and you help in doing that. We'll be back. All right, back on TYT. I'm gonna read a couple of fun comments from Twitch before we go to the next story, because I like them so much. Avenger Dragon wrote, ham sandwiches are pretty good. They might be contagious, Cenk, because now I want one. That's really funny. And Dixie the Black Cat wrote on Twitch, I'm using my free subscription for this instead of cute otters. This is how much I believe in TYT. Wow, that is quite the vote of approval. We appreciate it, okay? And they're talking about, of course, the free subscription, because if you have Amazon Prime, you can subscribe to shows on Twitch for free. Hey, that's us too. So how do you do that? Go to tyt.com/prime, and you could actually give us Jeff Bezos' money. He owns Amazon and Twitch, and you could redistribute it to us, and it doesn't cost you anything. So tyt.com/prime. Okay, let's go to the next story. And this one is a doozy. All right. Now, Peter Navarro used to be the trade advisor to Donald Trump. So obviously he was integral in trying to steal the election in 2020. Wait, what? Was a trade advisor have anything to do with any of this, right? The elections, it's where you're just supposed to be dealing in trade? No, Trump filled his administration with right-wing nut jobs who never actually did any of their jobs. They just went around trying to foment right-wing lunacy. And in the case of Navarro, he apparently conspired with Steve Bannon to do a coup, and he's now bragging about it. But before we get to Navarro and Bannon and their coup, and that is an amazing story. They just admitted it, exactly what their plan was. And apparently it was called the Green Bay Sweep. We're gonna get to that. But I wanna give you a sense of the other side of the Republican Party. So while Trump and his buddies were planning to steal an election, Rand Paul has a different idea what it means to steal an election. Let's go to his tweet. He said, this is of course the Republican senator from Kentucky, how to steal an election. Now listen carefully to this. Seed an area heavy with potential Democratic votes with as many absentee ballots as possible, targeting and convincing potential voters to complete them in a legally valid way, and then harvesting and counting the results. No, my friend, what you just described is democracy. That's exactly what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to get ballots to people who want to vote, then convince them to your side. You even said in the tweet that it's legally valid, and then you collect their votes and you count them. That's called an election. I mean, they're unbelievable. Guys, they're so used to stealing elections ahead of time. That and how do they do that? They say, I'm gonna purge the voter rolls. Oh, look at that, I happen to purge mostly African Americans and Latinos. Golly gee willikers, I don't know how that happened. Hey, I'm gonna have tons of polling areas in Republican districts, but if you're in a Democratic area, like an inner city, a university campus, an urban area, well then I'm gonna have very few polling stations, and you're gonna wait online for hours and hours and hours, to make sure you don't vote. Now here's Rand Paul, the schmuck, going around going, well, can you believe that? They didn't let us steal the elections ahead of time. Now they're letting people vote. What is this, a democracy? You think I'm exaggerating? No, this has been their plan for over 4 decades. Paul Weyrich, who was the godfather of the conservative movement, set up some of the biggest think tanks, including Heritage Foundation, that you still hear about today. Listen to what Weyrich said about voting.
Now, many of our Christians have what I call the goo-goo syndrome. Good government. They want everybody to vote. I don't want everybody to vote. Elections are not won by a majority of people. They never have been from the beginning of our country, and they are not now. As a matter of fact, our leverage in the elections, quite candidly, goes up as the voting populace goes down.
That's amazing. He admitted it in public, and now Rand Paul, this many years later, is going around going, can you believe the Democrats are trying to get people to vote? Stop the voting, stop the voting. Because voting is how you steal elections. No, that's the exact opposite. Voting is how you win elections. Trying to stop people from voting is how you steal elections. And that's what happened with Brian Kemp in Georgia. Now that's the normal Republican playbook, which now brings us back to Bannon and Navarro. So what did they do? Well, they tried the voter purges. They tried all those dirty tricks that they always do, right? And I need voter ID laws. Well, 25% of African Americans don't have a driver's license, mainly because they live in large cities and socioeconomic conditions. Now, it's not like they don't know that. Weyrich knew that. Rand Paul knows that. Every Republican politician that pushes for voter ID laws knows that there's almost no voter fraud in the country. It's like 0.0000001%. That's a fact, actually, from a Republican study. But you're gonna eliminate 25% of African American voters if you do voter ID laws. So that's normally how they steal elections. But Bannon and Navarro had a problem. They didn't do enough of that. Trump lost the election in 2020 anyway. So they had to organize how to steal an election afterwards. Now that's a lot trickier, right? Well, good news for us. Navarro wrote a book on how they did it or how they were planning to do it. And he has a curious culprit here for who foiled their plot. And it was right-wing rioters. Super interesting. All right, so now let's go to Daily Beast explaining it. In his recently published memoir, Peter Navarro, then President Donald Trump's trade advisor, details how he stayed in close contact with Bannon as they put the Green Bay sweep in motion with the help from members of Congress loyal to the cause. The Green Bay sweep. What in the world is that? Well, don't worry, he's gonna explain. He said, we spent a lot of time lining up over 100 congressmen, including some senators. It started out perfectly. At 1 p.m., Gosar and Cruz did exactly what was expected of them. Now remember, Cruz had his wife called ugly, and now this pathetic worm of a man is helping to organize a coup after the elections in favor of Donald Trump, who insulted his wife, his dad, etc. And Gosar is in the House. He starts the proceedings. He's so mentally unbalanced. All of his siblings have come out in political ads saying, please do not vote for our brother. He's basically a lunatic. So they're like, Bannon and Navarro go, that's our boys. One's a lunatic and the other's a worm. We'll get them to do anything we want, and they did exactly what was expected of them. So we're gonna explain what it was. He says it was a perfect plan, and it all predicated on peace and calm on Capitol Hill. We didn't need any protesters because we had over 100 congressmen committed to it. That is an amazing quote because that tells you 2 things. One is, he's saying, you schmucks, you didn't need to break into the building. The actual coup was happening inside the building. We already had 100 of our guys ready to throw the election, take the results and throw it in the garbage and destroy democracy. And you idiots broke in and did violence, and you interrupted us stealing the election in a more effective way. Now, the second thing that you get out of it is, he says it was the rioters' fault that otherwise we'd have stolen it, right? And that's the part that a lot of the press is focusing on. To me, the Green Bay sweep is way more interesting and almost gets rid of the need for the January 6th commission because the culprits actually just told you what their roadmap for the crime was. It's amazing, right? So, and I'll also note, well, who riled up those protesters? Trump did. So Navarro, who just the other day called Trump the smartest man he'd ever met, what a pathetic bootlicker Navarro is, now is basically saying, if that idiot Donald Trump hadn't riled everybody up in the violence, we had this thing stolen. Okay, in fact, he said, as you just saw, it was a perfect plan. So what was the plan? Daily Beast explains, Jose Pagliari writing in, this last minute maneuvering never had any chance of actually decertifying the election results on its own. A point that Navarro quickly acknowledges, but their hope was to run the clock as long as possible to increase public pressure on then Vice President Mike Pence to send the electoral votes back to 6 contested states where Republican-led legislators could try to overturn the results. Now, this is an integral part of how they plan to do the coup. So Mike Pence has a ceremonial role. He's the vice president and he's just supposed to get the results from the states and certify them. I've used this example before, this analogy before. It's like a guy going out to throw the first pitch in a baseball game. And Trump kept blaming Pence and it made no sense. And I would say, how's the guy throwing out the opening pitch supposed to win the game for you? He's not even in the game, it's ceremonial. But Navarro and Bannon explain here. They know that Mike Pence cannot unilaterally declare Donald Trump president, but he can delay things, and he can say, "Well, I'm just not counting it. I'm not going to count it. What are you going to do?" And the Constitution says I have to count it, and I'm not going to. Instead, I'm going to tell the Republican legislatures in those 6 states, just pretend that Trump won instead of Biden. Now, the delay is part of the strategy, because remember, this is all happening on January 6th. Inauguration day is January 20th, just 2 weeks later. If they delay long enough, they're going to say part of the plan, apparently, right? Now, this part he doesn't outline as clearly. I'm giving you all of his direct quotes. But if you think about it, for 2 weeks, if you just have Trump as president and they went back to all those states, Arizona, Georgia, etc., and the Republicans are pretending to do recounts, which they already did, the audits, all of that stuff had done, they had no evidence, but they're pretending to do that, they're gonna say, well, Trump's in office, we don't know who won, so the current president is just going to stay in office and we're not gonna do an inauguration. Boom, that's part of stealing it. But another part is the media, and they know that, so he gets to that. The political and legal beauty of the strategy was this. By law, both the House of Representatives and the Senate must spend up to 2 hours of debate per state on each requested challenge. For the 6 battleground states, that would add up to as much as 24 hours of nationally televised hearings across the 2 chambers of Congress. So they thought, well, by law, we get to dominate media for 24 straight hours. Now, we didn't actually win, we don't have any proof at all, but it doesn't matter. We don't need proof, we just need propaganda. Because if we can convince the Republican legislators that this is an open question, they'll just pretend Trump won instead of Biden, and boom, we steal the election. Green Bay sweep. Now, of course, the Bannons and the Navarros go, oh no, not stealing, we have real evidence, wink. I'm gonna get to that too. Navarro explains himself, the Green Bay sweep was very well thought out. It was designed to get us 24 hours of televised hearings, but we thought that we could bypass the corporate media by getting this stuff televised. Look at how much they care about the media. A giant point of Green Bay sweep was delay, get the media to focus on our propaganda instead of what is true. They've lost all the cases. They lost 60 cases. Even Trump appointed judges were like, you have presented no evidence, none. Get the hell out of my court. And they know that. They know that. That's why they've got to replace facts with propaganda. And if you have 24 hours of televised hearings where Republicans are lying nonstop, that entire time, propaganda wins over facts. So they continue. Navarro says Steve Bannon's role was to figure out how to use this information, what he called receipts, to overturn the election results. That's how Steve had come up with the Green Bay sweep idea. To overturn the results. Now, did they have any receipts? I just told you they had none. Every judge, including the most right-wing judges, every conservative judge said, you have no evidence, none. You're liars, get out of my court. They didn't win any of the cases. Since then, there's been, at the time there was audits, recounts, hand recounts. They won none of them. In fact, most of those wound up giving more votes to Biden than Trump. They had almost no cases of voter fraud at all in the whole country, let alone enough to swing 6 states. They knew they were lying, but they thought, who cares? Let's overturn the election anyway. And meanwhile, on that same day, January 6th, Bannon is running the play on his own show. And Green Bay Sweep is a reference to a football play where they rerun the same idea over and over and over. It was Lombardi's idea. You run the sweep play, and it doesn't matter how many times you do it, you just ram it down their throats. And what that is referring to here is the propaganda. You just repeat the propaganda over and over and over until people think that maybe you did win the election. And we don't need everybody to think that. We don't need most people to think that. Most people voted for Biden. He won by 7 million votes. Who cares? All we need is to convince the Republican state legislators to execute the coup for us with no evidence at all. Flat out steal the election. So what does Bannon say on that day on his show? He says, we are right on the cusp of victory. It's quite simple. Play's been called. Mike Pence, run the play. Take the football, take the handoff from the quarterback. You've got your guards in front of you. You've got big, strong people in front of you. Just do your duty. They're telling Pence, steal the goddamn election. Do it, run the play. Now, I gotta give credit to Pence. He didn't run the play, he knew what it was. And he refused to be part of stealing the election. And he deserves historic credit for that, to be fair. Now, last couple of things here. Daily Beast explains, indeed, and this ties back to Trump. Indeed, Trump legal advisor John Eastman had penned a memo, first revealed by journalists Robert Costa and Bob Woodward in their book Peril, outlining how Trump could stage a coup. And Trump clearly referenced the plan during his January 6th speech when he said, quote, I hope Mike is going to do the right thing. I hope so. I hope so. All Vice President Pence has to do is send him back to the states to recertify, and we become president, and you are the happiest people. But there's something Navarro got wrong. The riot didn't happen and foil their plan for a bloodless coup. The riot partly happened because Pence didn't play along. Remember the one thing they were chanting as they broke into the Capitol, which at first confused a lot of people. But when you know what the Green Bay sweep was, it explains everything. They were chanting, hang Mike Pence, hang Mike Pence, because he refused to be part of the coup. He refused to betray America like they wanted him to. He refused to destroy our democracy. That's why they wanted to murder him. That's only after their plan didn't work. And finally, Navarro says about his original plan, I'm telling you, man, it was just so peaceful. And about the proceedings on January 6th and the protests, I saw no anger, none, zero. Well, Peter, we saw the anger with our own eyes as they killed cops and attacked everyone in their way. They broke into the building and they were chanting about executing the man who wouldn't run the play you called, Peter Navarro, the play you called. That's why they were looking to murder him. And now you turn around and go, oh, we were gonna steal the election and destroy America without the violence. God damn it, they ruined it by doing the violence too early. I don't know if you know this, and you probably don't, because it appears by all accounts that you're a moron laying this out in front of everybody. But that is not exculpatory evidence. That actually is damning evidence. And by the way, they could wrap up the January 6th commission now. The guys just admitted exactly how they were planning to do the coup. The question is, are the Democrats going to do anything about it? Are prosecutors going to do anything about it? The riot should be punished because there was actual violations of the law like trespassing, violence, etc. But that's the sideshow. The Green Bay sweep was the actual plan to steal the election. Are you just gonna let that sit? If you don't punish that law breaking against our democracy, that attack, the actual attack on our democracy, well, next time they're gonna say, hey, we planned it. We told them in public that we were gonna do it, and they didn't know anything about it. So that means the next time we lose a presidential election, we just run this play. And that way, we kill democracy, and the schmuck Democrats saw us doing it and didn't do a goddamn thing about it. So it's put up or shut up time for all the people who claim that they care about January 6th. Are you going to actually do something about the coup that was planned and halfway executed in this country, or aren't you? You're going to turn us into a third, world banana republic here if you don't take action. They just told you the crime. They admitted it. They're rubbing it in your face. Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk, and I'll see you soon.